So welcome, nice to see you here. Welcome to our event today, the Luxembourg Supercomputing Day 2022. It's nice to see you here in presence, so many of you that could make it today. I'm Ramona Kaula. I'm the coordinator of the National Competence Center in High Performance Computing, High Performance Analytics and Artificial Intelligence enabled by high performance computing and computing power. The objective and mission of the Competence Center is actually to democratize the use of a supercomputer, the use by companies, being them startups, SMEs, or large companies, but also by researchers from academia and public administration. The event today is in the context of EuroCC project in Luxembourg. This is a collaboration between Luxinnovation, the Luxembourg Innovation Agency, and LuxProvide, the company that manages the Luxina supercomputer, and the University of Luxembourg. So it's my pleasure to be here today to moderate this event. It's really great to see you here today physically, actually, after so many online conferences, events. So it's a perfect opportunity for you to meet your peers, to exchange ideas, to discuss new ideas, and to actually have some drinks at the end in our networking session, where maybe, who knows, you'll meet the partner for you for new projects, new collaborations in the future. Actually, it's not only about us here today. We have an audience also online following us. I welcome them warmly as well. I hope our knowledgeable speakers here in the front line will inspire you, and thank you again for accepting our invitation to be here today. We host you, and yeah, we are we are happy to host you here. You may have seen on your seats there is a QR code. You are invited to scan these QR codes for finding out, discovering HPC applications. These are just some ideas. This is not an exhaustive list of HPC applications. These are just some of the many possibilities for applications of HPC. So let's get into what we have prepared for you today. So we have an interesting agenda, and I would like to start with our opening speech of Mario Grotz, Director General for Industry, New Technologies and Research at the Ministry of the Economy. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, dear guests, dear speakers, dear representative from the European Commission, dear Anders, Professor Lippert, thank you for being here. I'm really glad and proud to be able to participate at this event here, and it's really a great honor for me to be here to speak to you today. As I look across this Luxembourg supercomputing community, I realize that we come a long way together since our first discussion on developing a national supercomputer infrastructure in Luxembourg since 2016. Luxembourg was in fact the initiator of the first core group of 4 countries with France, Italy and Spain, who came together to discuss a strategy and blueprint for a European initiative on HPC. The white paper that emerged from those reflections strongly shaped the 3 pillars of the first EuroHPC regulation, especially the novel idea at the time of explicit Commission support for procurement of sophisticated HPC system was extremely important for Luxembourg. The subsequent EuroHPC declaration in Rome in March 2017 by 7 countries demonstrated both the need for a world-class data infrastructure in Europe and also the political will to make this happen. The Council regulation established in September 2018 by the EuroHPC concretized all our ideas and ambitions into a completely new, fit-for-purpose instrument, the EuroHPC. I'm proud to say that Luxembourg played an important role at that time, supported by many countries, to democratize the EuroHPC initiative by successfully advocating for the inclusion of a call on petascale machines. This can be seen as a starting point for the Maluxina project, which has been implemented here in Luxembourg. In parallel, and thanks to its previous engagement, Luxembourg has been selected as the host member state for the new EuroHPC Joint Undertaking Agency, and I'm really delighted to see that this agency is now growing rapidly here in Luxembourg. Since then, Luxembourg has continued its strong involvement in the shaping of the EuroHPC initiative. During much of last year, Luxembourg once again was able to make a significant contribution to the ongoing democratization of the EuroHPC initiative. The agreement for the support of both CAPEX and OPEX for all future mid-range machine is essential to build a truly cohesive European community. It strengthens our European family. In addition to the pioneering work in stimulating the EuroHPC ecosystem in Europe, Luxembourg also plays a strong and important role when it comes to the outroll of a broader European digital infrastructure. Just to mention a few of these initiatives. Since 2016, Luxembourg hosts the most of the data of the European Commission in Bedstov in one of our main, very secure data centers. In addition, the European Commission has taken the decision to establish its European Digital Pole in Luxembourg with the aim to develop a critical mass of knowledge and expertise in data analytics in Luxembourg. And more recently, Luxembourg also co-signed a joint declaration on cloud with the European Union, member states and the European Commission to collaborate towards the creation of a European cloud. All these initiatives demonstrate that Luxembourg is very well embedded in the European digital ecosystem, which it helps to shape with its proactive approach. However, today is a Luxembourg Day, and I would therefore like to close my speech by saying some words on our future digital transformed Luxembourg. Our economic plans for the future are reflected in the different strategic documents adopted by the government recently, the National Data Innovation Strategy, our strategy on artificial intelligence, the strategy on circular economy, and also the most recent Ons Wirtschaft für More, our roadmap for a competitive and sustainable economy for 2025. All the strategies highlight the importance of digitalization towards the development of a more competitive and sustainable economy. I'm sure that we all share the opinion that digital technologies and platforms are already transforming the lives of our citizens, the way we live, the way we work, and the way we do business. As these technologies become ever more integrated across all sectors and society. The Ministry of Economy fully recognizes the importance of these platforms and is giving them special attention. Our ambition for the future remains high. Recent projects that complete the digital economy, including the International Data Exchange Platform, the National Cloud Initiative, and the Luxembourg Digital Innovation Hub, are key projects for the future for the government. In addition, the Ministry, along with many of the actors present today, has recently engaged also in an intensive reflection on the Luxembourg factory of the future, where digitalization will also play a key role. As you can see, the challenges are high, but I'm confident that our partnership approach allows us to rise to these challenges. In conclusion, let me once again congratulate all here today and acknowledge the excellent and committed people behind the scene on the tremendous work which have been done since 2017 in all the European HPC community. I hereby would like to open the Luxembourg Supercomputer Day today, and I wish you a very interesting and fruitful discussions today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to Mario Grotz. Thank you for all the support from the government to the supercomputing initiative in Luxembourg and in Europe, actually, given that we had lead and contributed to initiating the strategy. Now we have a keynote speaker coming from Germany, Prof. Thomas Lippert, Director of the Institute for Advanced Simulation at Jülich Supercomputing Center, Chair of Modular Supercomputing and Quantum Computing at Goethe Universität in Frankfurt, and Chair of the Gauss Center for Supercomputing. He is one of the founding members of Human Brain Project, and he has initiated a series of European-funded deep projects. Prof. Lippert, I invite you on the stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this nice introduction. I'm extremely honored to be here. I remember the days when Mr. Spaus was visiting us without announcing himself on our so-called Christmas colloquia. And this was very interesting. Finally, he, of course, was telling who he was, and we had deep, in-depth discussions on supercomputing. So this relation to Luxembourg started at this time. I'm very happy that this was coming up. And so I'm here just first to congratulate you on Meluxina and on a machine that is outstanding, that makes you as a country a stronghold of supercomputing in Europe, among not so many, I would say 7 to 8, finally, when the exascale machines will come. So this means that Luxembourg is in this club of the very forward-looking countries where innovation at the highest level is created. That's very important in my opinion, and all this what has to do with data, with AI, and with simulation, as with digital twins we say today, that's more or less a basis for the future of our wealth and economies. So I also would want to thank the two companies that we also have in our house that enabled these technologies. One is Atos Bühl, and the other one are our friends from Partec. Both are friends, but Partec very long time, where we have created lots of technologies and hopefully also can help here on these machines to bring these machines to fruitful operation with these technologies. What I want to talk today about is that we actually are going into a new phase of supercomputing, of computing of IT, when, so to say, the next generation of machines comes. We always talk about such generations. You remember when the gigaflops, the megaflops, the teraflops, the petaflop era. Now we talk about the exaflop era. What makes it so important? Probably nothing. It's just our numbering system that gives us an idea about exponentiality, about exponential growth. Think of the fact that if you had a gigaflop machine in 1990, then these machines that come next step are 1 billion times more powerful. So you have 1 billion times 1 billion operations per second. This is coming, and you are close to that with the machine that you have. It's not so far. Yeah? That's where the development goes. Of course, exponential growth in computing does not translate automatically in exponential growth, let's say in other fields or in other KPIs. But without exponential growth, you can be sure that many things are just leveling out and do not really develop in the future. That's the reason I call it machines for mankind. The supercomputers are machines for mankind, especially when we strive for getting bigger ones, when we strive for doing more with them, when we strive for having more applications and new technologies, as for instance, AI technologies, and finally including technologies to come, maybe quantum computers, maybe neuromorphic computers. Where do I come from? I'm one of the institute's directors of the Jülich Research Center, Forschungszentrum Jülich, and on the right-hand side you can probably recognize a round object. This is one part of our supercomputing center. And the mission of this center are, let's say, essentially fivefold. First of all, we want to develop the technology on all levels, technological level, application level, methodological level, etc., that allows to do simulation and to do large-scale data analytics towards exascale. When we are at exascale, we want to go the next step. Yeah? This will not end there, of course. Yeah? We want to introduce future technologies, quantum computers. Currently, we are talking about quantum annealers. Soon we will talk about quantum simulators. These are also quantum computers, like the French Pascal system. And then we will talk about gate-based quantum computers, the true type of quantum computing to come, maybe in 5 years, maybe in 10 years. This is where we are heading for. Neuromorphic computing, not to forget. Compute how the brain computes. The brain is especially suited to do things a computer has some difficulties, or the programming of a computer has some difficulties with. And it can do it at a very low energy consumption. Of course, we believe we have understood a lot about the brain. Maybe we did not yet understand enough, but progress in this type of computing is extremely impressive. Okay, then creating infrastructures for data analytics and AI means that we are able to handle big, heterogeneous, structured, unstructured data lakes to come, things that finally will allow to bring the data on the fly together. A data lake, you put the data in, they are not fully, let's say, structured in, but there are catalogs for that. And when you get them out, when you want to combine, you use computing to get the whole structure into the data. That's where we head for. And of course, support structures and tools. This is complicated technology. Even, let's say, a well-educated scientist will not be able a priori just to use such machines and to use such technologies. We have to work constantly to support people. And of course, the new ones. Most important, educate a new generation of simulation, data science specialists, people who know how to apply AI. Why do I call them machines for mankind?
To visualize the impact of the volcanic eruption, we utilize a third-party data set containing over 3 million historical flight schedules, as well as whether they were on time, delayed, or cancelled. We focus on airports in the southern hemisphere over the same temporal span available as the volcanic data sets. Each flight is represented as a colored arc connecting the departure and arrival airports. Green arcs represent normally scheduled flights, and red arcs represent flights that were either cancelled or delayed. The extent of the delay is encoded into the saturation of the color, with a higher saturation indicating a longer delay. A dark red path indicates that the flight was cancelled entirely. We also animate the specular highlight on each curve so that users can identify the direction of travel. In this example, flights that lie within a 24-hour time window are displayed and match the time window used to display the volcanic data. Animating the ash clouds as well as the flight data reveals many interesting observations. For example, we can see that the flights in Chile were not interrupted initially due to the west to east wind direction. However, this caused the ash cloud to head towards Buenos Aires, grounding a large number of flights. Next, the subtropical jet stream carried the ash cloud all the way to Australia and New Zealand. We can see that the major cancellations present in both countries are consistent with the ash cloud's arrival. Finally, the cloud completes the first circle around the globe, arriving in Chile again. This time, a large number of Chilean flights became cancelled.
So you see, it is not just a matter of supercomputing to display the airlines. You can do it on your laptop. Of course, a powerful server is behind that. But it's absolutely a matter of supercomputing, first of all, to analyze the data for the ash clouds, and then to forward, simulate those data, and to predict. We will see in 10 hours or in 24 hours, we will see a huge cancellation of flights at a certain hub. And this, of course, is something that's very relevant for society, relevant for all of us. So that's just a striking example, and it belongs to the field of Earth system modeling. So Earth system modeling is, of course, very famous because every 7 years we have this IPCC report. I can tell you that's very important. Without these investigations, we would not even talk about climate change. We could not. We could see some, maybe half a degree of change in average temperature, but what would it mean? We would see fluctuations in the growing, let's say, with extreme events, but we would not be able to relate them to what? To a prediction that is made by simulation scientists having huge amount of models. There are many groups worldwide, and the tendency is that putting all these models together, some predict temperature is going down, but the majority predicts temperature is going up. We can be quite certain that this is correct. And this means we have here a means that, an instrument that allows us to predict the future. It's a crystal ball, if you like so. And without this crystal ball, maybe we would be too late to do measures. Very hopefully we do the right ones. Yeah, so that's just one example, and about 20% of our computing time that we have at my place at Jülich Research Center, machine is called Joules. There are Joules cluster and Joules booster. It's a modular machine, is for this type of science. And it exemplifies one thing. It's accuracy, it's tackling higher complexity, it's doing this by higher resolution, by higher system size and larger time periods, at least 5 dimensions, if not more, that we have to increase in the future in order to become better in this type of activities. So if you have 5 such type of factors, if you only want to be a factor 10 better, okay, factor 10 better in each of those, I can tell you it's at least a factor of 10 to the 5, 100,000, but that's not really true. The system size goes with the third cube, or even the fourth, it depends on how do you do it. So it's more than 1 million, 10 million times better you have to be when you want to do everything by a factor of 10 better. Yeah? More resolved, better resolved for a longer time period, etc. That's a very simple justification. It holds for any type of physical system where you have a number of degrees of freedom, where you have a finite system size that you want to make larger. The Earth is like this. It's a finite system size, but your resolution has to come down. Other field, civil safety. You have experiments where we know how pedestrians behave. In fact, the real experiments go back to the 30s in Russia. These are the data all our legislation, at least in Germany, is using for all the architectural laws and constraints on buildings. This has been redone and is in a continuous process to be done. And if you want to understand how your sons and daughters are in danger when they go into a football stadium or to a rock concert, you can just do such and look at such simulation, where we begin to understand the densities that are exerted on human bodies. But we need really complex body modeling. There's a lot of mathematics involved. It's called a closed loop of research, starting from the experiment, the modeling, the simulation, and finally getting the result visualized in order to know what's going on there. So you see here such Voronoi diagrams for the experts. That's mathematics to understand what is your personal, so to say, area where you are in. And on these diagrams you see the pressure. No wonder, if we know all of this, that in some locations people die from pressure when there are too many. Yeah? That's very important research. The real important thing is, what happens if there is an emergency, if there is fire, if there is smoke, if there is an explosion. Yeah? If this happens, this does not give you much. This just gives you the basic. But then the forward simulation comes, and for this you need a big machine. You need exascale capabilities to do all of this. Yeah? So you see lots of different aspects, but this is just some nice example where such research really takes root. Or if you look at energy, all over Europe we have energy-oriented center of excellence. That's a cooperation between France and Germany as the leaders of this. The CEA is in the Maison de la Simulation, is leading this project. Since 2015 we are working on that to understand solar cells better, to understand wind farms better, to understand hydropower better in Europe. So that's actually to simulate a Green Deal, to understand what does sustainable energy really mean. I think one of the successful ones, because these results will run on exascale machines. I think people are talking about digital twins. What does it really mean? If you want to understand experimental images, for instance, in electron microscopy, the problem is that you need a refined model that you can only get through best fitting simulation, and it goes back and forth between both to build up what the reality might be. What is a real atom and what is a fake atom in your picture? And for that you need to build up a digital twin. That's just one example of those activities in material science, step by step and atom by atom. Or brain, yeah, we all have a brain. So what I often hear is, oh, I think I understand how the brain works because I have a brain. We believe that's exactly what it is not, yeah? Because we have a brain, it is so difficult to understand our own brain. And finally, the understanding needs a sort of scheme. an order where the data has to be hooked in that the experimentalists have. We call it a brain atlas. If you want to have such an atlas, it's better you have a very fine-grained one, so that you can have the most scales that you encounter in the brain in. And it is not just a three-dimensional scheme. The brain is warped. The brain is like the most complicated problem that you might have in general relativity. It's a differential geometric object. Yeah? That's the reason they create a brain atlas, a digital twin for the human brain. There are slices of the brain made, and the slices then are analyzed, and then they are cell by cell connected again to form a three-dimensional space, and in this three-dimensional space, several other mathematical dimensions are hooked on and generate the brain. And finally, you want to do this, you need multi-petabyte storage, you need a multi-petaflop machine, you need finally to get all those back into the cloud so that the students, that the surgeons can look at it if they do something, and finally follow those, let's say, guidelines given by the Atlas when they do real medical interventions on us. Yeah. That's where we have, where we see the future of this research. And then finally, you can recreate these ultra-fine, let's say, axons that we have in the brain that end at the nerve cells and the dendrites in order to give the impulses. So it's something that we would not think of how dense the information lines are. Methodologically, there is one important field on the rise since some time, and for a long time it was seen as, okay, that's something done on a server. You just buy the software, the framework, the platform, and then you do your AI. It turns out that the really successful activities are not done like that. The really successful activities are done on the upper right point. This is AlphaFold. And if you look at this, you need more than 10 to the 4 petaflop days to do the learning for AlphaFold in order to be as successful as AlphaFold is. If this goes into to be commercialized, not only there, but in many other fields as well, of course you will need many of those platforms to do the training of the corresponding, let's say, of the corresponding problem. And 10 to the 4 petaflop days, this is 10,000 petaflop days, this is 30 petaflop years, so let's say 25 petaflop years. This is, if you have 10,000 days, you divide it by 1,000, you have 10 exaflop days. So on an exaflop machine, if you can use it for that, you can do the job in 10 days. But think of what Google has in order to do this when they talk about 10,000 petaflop days. This is a growth. We have planned, and you also have it, maybe you are not fully aware, you have a dual use system in the best sense. What does it mean, the dual use? It is as good as the best possible AI machine, which is an NVIDIA pod. Yeah? It is as good as that with its technology to do AI activities. And so you cannot only do simulation, you can also do AI on a large scale and bring both together so that simulation and AI can cooperate. That I call dual use in a positive sense. And what you can see here, the green one are, of course, the NVIDIA own results, and the blue one are the ones on our machine. We did not especially optimize for that. That is to be known. But what you can see here, for some of those, we are on par, even with a very, very, very hard optimized AI engine, which cannot do the simulation, which is not dual in this sense. So you see we are on the right path. This is, for instance, also one of the arguments that we should go for exascale with this technology, because we know then we also have a platform for large-scale AI. And so we go on. There are use cases. I don't want to bother you with all of that. One is, for instance, to understand the RNA structure with machine learning. These are typical use cases where people need a large amount of parallel type of jobs on platforms in order to come to terms with the problem. Now, from science, gradually we went to applications, and now maybe some words on economy. We are not especially an industrial site in Jülich, but we have good relations to economy. We have about 10% of our compute time we are doing with companies, with customers in this sense. At this stage, we started this some time ago, in 2015, an industrial relations team, especially devoted. We had industrial relations before, but then we started it. I think it's really a success story because we managed that this team has now a number of permanent larger industry clients. We have a few others, maybe about 20 SMEs, which are not as intensive with us, but 15 are very intensive, among them Siemens, for instance, or Tenet. This is one of the network, the power grid planning companies. And there are some examples, so where we provide HPC computing time, for instance, to an engineering office that deals with fire evacuations with Tenet, as they need software and hardware consulting and simulation capabilities, as well as some simulation company that is doing CFDs for quite a number of technologies. So these are just taken 3 examples, but you can take from the examples before also. There is relations where all these activities are intertwined also with the application side. If we look at our cooperation landscape, we have, of course, internally, we have a lot in Germany with other sites, with other centers, with initiatives, but there is much more with companies when it comes to terms with technologies development. Of course, with many sites in Europe, experimental ones, also one observational is LOFA or the upcoming SKA, then the sites like CEA, the Human Brain Project, and so on. And let's conclude with the international ones, where a lot of activities are done with the large centers in US, in Japan, and in former times also with Russia, but not anymore. So this is, I think, how it should go, and with you, we want to have also such relation, and also maybe that you can participate from some of our experiences with partners we have in the world. What is the state of the art of the systems? So I have a slogan that the future is modular. This means the past was not. What does it mean the past was not modular? It means in the past you have just bought one machine which solved all your problems, more or less. Why was it possible? You did not have such a large portfolio of problems. The portfolio of problems, when I started out, you could see maybe 5 fields that were real intensive users of supercomputing. I do not name the fields today. I know that we have made 12 categories in place to understand what supercomputing is on the highest level. But it was certainly not 12 fields. It is maybe 50, maybe 80, I even do not know. This has grown extremely in the past and up to now. And in order to cope with this modularized type of applications they have workflows. Some things they would better do on this machine, some things they would better do on the other machine. We have started to understand what would a modular approach mean, and we have done this together with Partec in Munich, and I welcome Hugo Falder, who is here today as a representative and COO of the company. So in 2020, we have, together with Athos and Agnes, I name you as a representative of Athos Bühl, in a very, very successful cooperation, I must say, made it into becoming a rank number 7 machine in the world. I think if there was no COVID, maybe it would have been number 6. There we had some problems at this time. But this does not play so much a role. For us, it's clear if you have a big machine, you have a high low number in the top 500 list. The most important thing here was that it was ranked number 1 in the green top 500 list. So this was the most energy efficient system among the top 100. Then at the end of the list come some very small things which you can always make energy efficient, yeah? But not the big ones. It's a different thing. And the top machine in AI. I guess what you have here is very similar to this. Yeah? That's exactly the same technology, has the same path to go. Okay, these are more partners in NVIDIA, a very important one where we created a lab recently at our place. Mellanox, a long-term partner in interconnects. Since 2007, we are working with Mellanox in Israel, now also part of NVIDIA. What is modular supercomputing? The idea is that you have different separate units that are autonomous. So the cluster, you know. A cluster computer is meanwhile known. Since 2010, we have those machines. I think also here we have been among the first worldwide to do this and to go away from the custom-designed machines like Gray had built. But then we came to the theoretical idea, if you have two different varieties of computing technologies available, here you have CPUs and here you have GPUs. You might have others, but okay. Can you use this in a positive sense? Of course, you can combine them on a board, and then what is done on the CPU needs maybe some time on the GPU, and so on. This is one approach. It's very fixed. Our approach is different. We say, in the future, we want to assemble the one kind of technology, GPUs in one system, CPUs in the other system, quantum in the third system, neuromorphic in the fourth system, and so on, and develop the software technology that can dynamically allocate all resources to each other. Now you know, this is a data center. This is not anymore a supercomputer. It's a data center. That's exactly what you want to do in the ideal data center with an ideal network which is so fast that you don't feel it. Then, if you are a user, in the future you can go in and then your job will create your specific supercomputer. It's not so that the supercomputer is there and you must comply with it. No, your job or your activity, your interactive activity. This is the first time we can talk about interactive supercomputing in a reasonable sense, by the way. Can create your supercomputer dynamically. So at a certain time in your job, it is of this size and this fashion. Then you enter in your workflow something different. So it transforms itself to something more powerful. That's why we call it modular supercomputing. I remember very much how people have laughed about the idea. No, they don't anymore laugh about the idea. It was maybe 10 years ago when the first ideas came up. Too complicated, never possible. The companies never will do it. Some things come from themselves. It's very clear that it will come. And how would you want to include a quantum computer in such a system when it is really a one unit that cannot be distributed on the system? So you have to have an idea on that. Here you have the idea. Here you have the software. This will be the future, how quantum computing is unified with supercomputing. I'm quite sure about that, working on this. Then you can run jobs how you want. Yeah? You can have them using different components. Admittedly, this means you have to know how you schedule your resources. Scheduling is the most important thing here. And there comes a new technology, which means that you can have multi-users on your system. Yeah? Not only one on one partition. So this must, of course, be realized. We are on that. We have European projects, thanks to EuroHPC, thanks to the EU, where exactly these technologies and ideas have been developed and have been realized. I would call it, we have now also a European-owned IP here. Then the last question I want to ask, is the future quantum? We have started quantum computing in 2004. I have founded a quantum computing group in 2004 after I have done my habilitation in 2000, where people asked me, maybe Mr. Lippert, in 2 days you have your habilitation talk. Can you tell us about quantum computing? So I had 2 days to prepare. This was a fun time. Thanks God I was in quantum physics before. I'm a quantum field theorist. It was not so hard, but it was revealing to me something new. Yeah? I was not as deeply aware of what's going on. I will not answer the question if the future is quantum. I only want to motivate that some elements of this certainly will be there. The quantum annealer, this is in our building that we have built for that. It is vibration-free foundation and all of this, small building, very nice. It hosts a D-wave quantum annealer. Such machine today produces results based on quantum theory. It's in some fields better than any classical computer. It is not a universal quantum computer, but it works. Yeah? You can really be sure what you get works after that when you invoke it. We are in the process to connect it to the HPC system for real production. We are very happy that the company D-Wave was working with us in this respect. Maybe one word to quantum computing as such. Quantum computing for a physicist and for a theoretist like me is most fascinating. I want to give you, just for fun, an idea why is it fascinating. I will say something different you might hear from others. So what you hear from others is, yes, there is quantum, there is a superposition, the bits are not anymore bits, they are called qubits, they are between 0 and 1, but in between somewhere. Of course, that's all a mathematical description, that's a state description with coordinates which a physicist anyway would not use, yeah, like that. And then you make a superposition of those bits and you get a fully, let's say, superposed state, and then you give it the right coefficients as input, and then you have an algorithm. That's the way it works in principle. The real thing is, if you want to have an algorithm that works, you have to be sure that when you come at a point where you measure, there is only one of your 2 to the n coefficients that you have in the system. These are your degrees of freedom to compute on. One of those is remaining. All the others should be 0. Now you know this is a dance on the tip of the needle. The algorithm must be there. There must be ingenious people to have such algorithms, but also then you need a dance on the tip of the needle to arrive there. I'm sure it will be achieved. This is something that technology can do finally. I'm not sure when. If it is achieved, it will be the breakthrough in many fields which we do not even know today. Yeah? So there are things that we cannot tackle with physics methods. Like, for instance, the infamous sign problem. We have only very, very limited ways to go for the sign problem. The sign problem is a problem that arises in the treatment of fermionic systems. If you can solve it, a new field of material science will emerge. Yeah? And such machines like D-Wave and machines to come with quantum computers, for instance, they would not have this problem because there are quantum systems themselves. If you have the right algorithms where you know what you measure, what you do, is the result or is close to it, we call it amplitude amplification, then you have solved the problem. I'm talking too long, I know, but I wanted to make this side remark. Exascale under Portas. There is, of course, a race, and this is what you see in the press. The Japanese have done a machine in 2021, where they have put in, actually it was more than $1 billion. Very good machine, but also very expensive. In the US, you find a machine that's very important very soon, probably in summer. They want to go for 3 in China. They have one, they all claim, but it's unclear. But now comes Europe. We want to have one very soon. Yeah? We are going for a machine together with EuroHPC. Actually, it's owned by EuroHPC. We are only the servants of EuroHPC. We will do that. And Anders is sitting here and he's smiling. Also Josephine, they are both smiling. We try to do that. We try to be on par with the others here. And we want to put in as much European technology that's possible. Yeah? How we do that? First of all, we have made a thorough investigation. One can say about praise what one wants. I think this is the most important thing, that there was a scientific case which justifies in very many scientific fields to go for exascale. Also warning how one should not go to exascale and what would be the best approach to go to exascale. Of course, this concerns a lot of manufacturing industry, materials, complexity, etc. Worth to read, does not cost anything. It's a PDF file you can find on the Brace homepage. And it's fun to read. Recommend it every evening when you are going to sleep. Read a bit. Some of you will immediately fall asleep, but for some of you it might be too exciting. Maybe you don't read. Okay, a modular exascale concept. You have now a lot of elements that you want to bring together. Our target is that present machine has to be amplified in its power by a factor of 20. Our machine is joules in Jülich. It has 85 petaflops. Let's take 50 petaflops of it, run jobs, and we want to have 20 times the performance on the new machine. We believe we can only do this if we put together different, let's say, modules, a cluster module, 1 or 2 booster modules, it depends. It depends also on the offers the companies make. Parallel data system modules, network attached memory modules, interactive computation, visualization, maybe some specialized modules like a stencil booster and a quantum booster and a neuromorphic computing booster. This is something that might not come at the first day, but can be added to the system in the future. I'm not talking about utopia here. The software to do this is existing. Yeah? We can build such system. And then we hope that we can go along this line. We started out in 2011 with the deep projects, EU-funded projects, that meanwhile got more than 120 million euro in funding. We went to the C projects by Hpc JU. Then there were some intermediate machines, and I'm very, very happy that Meluxina is going this direction and made also, like we did, a first step into modularity. Leonardo in Bologna will be like that, and I learned today that the BSC machine at Barcelona Supercomputing Center, BSC. Barcelona Supercomputing Center also will go for a modular system. We have some projects, UPEX, and there's also in the HPC QS project, the quantum infrastructure project, we now start to create a software to include quantum computers. And so between 2023 and 2024, maybe I hope it will be in 2023, we want to have the exascale machine in Europe running. So it's under Portas. The building is planned. We only wait for the final yes from all the committees and commissions, and I don't know. We are ready to start to build it. It will be built in 13 months. There seem to be people around that doubt this. I can tell you our quantum building we have built in 5 months. So one can do it if one is prepared to do. That's what we want. This is a very specific building made let's say used using technologies that the hyperscalers are using for much bigger ones, but trying to optimize with cooling on the roof. That's what it will be. I hope that we can have very fruitful collaboration with Meluxina, with Luxembourg in this. We have ample talks meanwhile. We want to create scientific showcases, use cases, where we can work together and finally develop supercomputing, quantum computing, and everything else in Europe together for the future of our society and of all of our world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Lippert, for coming all the way up from Germany for our event and for giving us a glimpse into the future. But now let's have an overview of the European supercomputing strategy presented by Anders Dam-Jensen, the Executive Director for the European High Performance Computing Joint Undertaking. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. Thank you for giving me mission impossible of following Thomas. Anyway, as Mary Grotz correctly said, Luxembourg actually has a very prominent role in the European HPC scene, not just because of all the good things you're going to hear today from other speakers about Meluxina, but because of their influence on EuroHPC, which I will take you through now, and also for hosting it. And I really want to thank you for that. It's fantastic. We'll go through who we are and where we live, but we are based here in Luxembourg. So Luxembourg really sets the scene for Europe when it comes to managing these machines. Now, I guess I need to click that one. Yes. So EuroHPC, who are we? Well, we are an EU body, independent body. We created EuroHPC, as Mr. Grotz also said, was actually created back in 2018. But it really took speed when we became autonomous and moved into these lovely offices out in Gasbridge. Becoming autonomous means we run our own budgets, we do our own procurement, and that was important because what was lined up was a procurement of no less than, well, at that time, 6 supercomputers. And I think very few people can say that they managed to sign for 6 supercomputers in the space of 2 weeks, which was exciting, and Meluxina was one of them. So we were created for that purpose, and I think what it makes us very unique, and it makes us unique in an EU context as well, is that we're doing these shared procurements, or joint procurements. And I'll go a little more into detail on that. But just to finish, I mean, at this point in time, we're a very small team. We're 14 people, and I keep on reiterating that, because if anyone's sitting out there and gets to at the end gets to the conclusion, this could be really, really great to be part of, please keep an eye on our website. We've already done one recruitment round, and I'm really happy to say that it was successful, and we'll be welcoming our first new colleagues already next week. So next week will be a very special week for us, because it takes time to recruit, and especially takes time when people need to be asked to move and so on. So the first people are joining us next week, and then we'll have a steady stream of people coming in. So finally, the team gets some relief with everything that needs to be done. But we'll start another round. So again, can't emphasize enough. If you think this could be interesting to be part of, please, first of all, don't hesitate to contact either myself or Joe, but also follow our website. And I'll click there. So again, we're an EU body, which means basically what we have is we have not only the EU member states, we actually have participating states beyond the normal EU countries. At this point in time, we have 31 participating states that are part of EuroHPC. So countries like Turkey and so on who are not in EU members, but they are still part of EuroHPC. I am at the next governing board going to put 2 more countries forward that wishes to be part. So we're very popular. We're a joint undertaking, and what joint means is we joint. I mean, the idea is to do these things in collaboration, jointly. So on one hand, we have the Commission and the European Union, and then we have the participating states. And then further to that, we also have private partners. So what you'll see is we get into the basic research of HPC and the usage of HPC, and for that we have private partners that are also sitting on our governing board and guiding us on that. We've been put in this world, you can say broadly, for 3 missions, and the previous speakers actually touched upon it to a large extent. Not first of all, one pillar of it, because they're all equally important, but the first pillar there is to build up a world-class supercomputing infrastructure. And you'll see that we've added quantum. So with the new regulation that came into place, what we're doing currently for HPC will equally be true for quantum. The aim here is that together we can do more. And by joining forces and by joining pots of money, we can all get bigger machines. So these joint procurements, what happens is that the joint undertaking contributes, and the participating state that wishes to host the machine contributes, and together, that's the way the supercomputing world works. Double the money gives you much more than double the machine. So we all get a better machine collectively, and on the European side, we built up this network of machines where part of that capacity we manage, and the other part of the capacity the hosting country manages and do with what they wish to do with it. And I think particularly for this crowd, Luxembourg has built up a machine that is very focused on business, and I think that actually makes the LuxProvide and Luxina fairly unique in our scenario. And I can tell you there are other participating states looking at how to potentially replicate such a scenario. On our side, on the JU side, we give, and I'll get a little back to that, it is for scientific research. And I'll talk a little to that process. Then, equally important, we invest in research. So we go out and fund projects. I'm actually quite proud that some of the projects that Thomas was referring to have come to life using funding from EuroHPC. So a large pillar of the joint of EuroHPC is where scientists can put in calls, we put out calls for different technologies, and then we fund projects that develop that technology. And the aim really is to strengthen the European supply chain. You can say the crown jewel amongst the projects is the vision to build a European processor. I think we all know today, if we wish to have a processor, we can choose basically between Intel and AMD. They're both American. We also have the ARM architecture out there, but none of them are European. We wish to get back into that game, and considerable resources is being put in to build a European processor, to the extent that the stated aim is that a future exascale machine should include a significant footprint of European technology. And then last but not least, we look to widen the use, and this is back to the democratization of HPC, which was alluded to before. It's very much, and my whole team wholeheartedly agree to this, one thing is not just to have more huge machines. No, we need to also have a number of, we also need to broaden the usage of, and by placing machines across Europe, so that we get as much exposure to HPC as possible, and we enlarge the user community. And with that, we're going to be investing significantly in skills. And again, Luxembourg has taken quite a leading position in this, in the fact that they are the ones now running our master's program for HPC. So again, a very much a lead. So if we look at what we have right now, we have a total of 5 systems. Meloxina is a key system in this. We have a total of 5 operational systems out there that's available to scientists. So in Luxembourg, Slovenia, Chechnya, Bulgaria, and Finland, we have machines that are ready to go. Then they will be joined by 3 additional systems. It was already alluded to by previous speakers. We have one being built in Italy, which, by the way, is just a larger version of Meloxina. I mean, the technology that you have here and access to in Meloxina is essentially the same technology as Leonardo in Italy will be based on. And then finally, it was also said, yes, we are in the very, very, very final phase of also signing a contract for a machine to be built in Spain. And then there's more systems to come. We've been given a new regulation, which means new challenges. And the big one, of course, is the exascale, which Thomas alluded to. It is the aim of EuroHPC that we go forward with that and hopefully can present that in 24, make that available in 2024. But equally, we'll have a number of mid-range machines, so similar size to Meloxina, in a number of countries. So what happens is we go out and say who wishes to host the machine, and countries put in bids, and then we hopefully come to an agreement of co-financing those machines. We, in the next governing board, will be putting forward a number of new countries that are eager to also have their machines. In all of this, with the current energy, I think we can safely call it crisis that's going on. Of course, HPC is big energy consumers. This is one of those places where we believe Europe has a particular role to play. And we believe we're playing it within the JU. Essentially, all of our machines, without exception, have been picked because they have been able to put forward a credible energy story, if we can call it that. Each country is, of course, different. You know, you put a machine in Finland, it's easy to cool it. You just open the window, right? Put one in Portugal, it's a little harder, but all of them we look very carefully when we choose who hosts the machine, how is the energy produced, and what is excess heat and so on used for. And also the people behind Meloxina will also be able to tell you a very compelling story of how that is working up in Bizen. As I fear that that's coming later, I'm not going to steal their thunder. Anyway, our 5 machines right now, as we know them, just to put pictures on them. And Meluxina is very special to us because we are based here in Luxembourg, and Meluxina is the machine here in Luxembourg. But I also have to say, amongst the petascales, it's the largest machine. And whilst I'm saying here, well, it goes over 12 petaflops, actually the people behind Meluxina will tell you that it can go quite a bit further, because it's the way it's been architected in this modular fashion, it can actually be hooked up to do more than that. If you look at the top 500 ranking, we're talking about the 11th fastest machine here in the EU, and number 45 amongst the globally. I mean, this is absolutely not shabby. But again, if we look at the green ranking, which is where we look at how much compute power do you get per watt of power you put in, we're really good here in Europe. The technology behind it, it's really impressive to see that Meluxina, for a very large machine, is ranked number 2 here in the EU, but also number 9 globally. So again, back to who can access our machines. Well, on the you as a user, potential user of Meluxina, will have access via LuxProvide to an environment which is geared for business. On our side, we provide access to scientists via a peer review process. So the way this works is that if someone has a scientific project to be run on any of our machines, there's a peer review process where you put in your application, a set of scientists will look at them and make sure that what we get is basically, we get the best science for the time that we allocate. And so judging on what is the predicted outcome, we need results needs to be disseminated, everything needs to be open source because this is essentially open science. I think I'm not going to spend a lot of time. Thomas actually did this much better. What do we use the machines for? It's an ever-growing field. We continue to have new areas come up. In the past, supercomputing was a very narrow field where the geeks who'd seen the light knew what to do with it. Now it's people are seeing, hang on, if I had access to that, maybe I could also do something. And this is really what this whole broadening the usage of HPC, getting people trained, having the skills in it. We hope that this will really spark a complete new set of applications which no one had thought about before. Because again, what we can do on supercomputers are things you cannot just do on one machine. I mean, it is a quantum leap. Sorry for using the quantum word. It is a significant leap from just your standard compute farm to go into a supercomputing environment. On the research and innovation, this is a really important pillar for EuroHPC. We're funding research in a number of areas. You can say, and Thomas already alluded to some of it, which is the hardcore. How do we make European IP within the supercomputing field within HPC? So where we have projects that look at the interconnects, processors, and so on. But we also go into applications. Europe has been really, really good at HPC applications over time and really built up a lot of expertise in doing applications right. I do not know if this for a fact, but it's my gut feeling that because the European machines have always been a little smaller, the applications actually had to be written better. And now what we're doing is we're giving big machines to the user community. We're investing heavily, as I said, in the training side, and then international collaboration is going to be the next thing that we're also going to get into. As we're here, EuroCC is basically hosting us as a project. EuroCC is not just what you're seeing here. There's actually a counterpart in every single participating state. In total, right now, there are 33 national HPC competency centers that is run under the EuroCC umbrella. So if you are if you are getting in touch with EuroCC and Luxinnovation, they actually have the ability to get in touch with a number of colleagues around in this network to support you. We also have a project which I find really interesting, which is Fortissimo for Euro HPC, which is basically the ability for SMEs to get in and get some help to get started. Again, for all of these projects, we've actually left some folders outside, and you can get more details on them. You can also go to our website and look at them. But last but not least, talk to the people here, because this is why within the EuroCC and Luxinnovation. And then the EU Masters program. I think it closed last week for applicants. I'm looking at, is it last week or next week? 15th of May. You can still make it. So this is going to be really, really interesting. This is quite an ambitious project. It's being run by, the lead is with Luxembourg University. And this is to basically allow students to end up with a master's degree in HPC. I'm really looking forward to, and it's pan-European, so it's a good collaboration across Europe. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the results on that. And with that, I want to thank you for your time. And yeah, if you have any questions, please see our website.
Thank you, Anders, for your work and for the work of all your colleagues at the Euro HPC joint undertaking to lead such an ambitious supercomputing strategy in Europe. That sounds like an amazing job. Ambitious. From the European perspective, actually, we're going to see a local one, so to focus on Luxembourg, where we are wondering what does supercomputing mean in Luxembourg, who are the main players, and what are the opportunities available. So to answer this question, I leave the floor to Sarah Bouchon, the Director of Market Intelligence at Luxinnovation. Thank you, Sarah.
So thank you, Ramona. Good afternoon, all. I'm very happy to be here with you this afternoon. So in the next 10-15 minutes, I would like to share with you the results of the mapping of the potential HPC market we did in Luxembourg. So this mapping was realized by the Market Intelligence Department at Luxinnovation in collaboration with LuxProvide. So as innovation agency, we are convinced of the role HPC can play to lead the digital transformation of our economy. And so in this regard, we were very much interested to understand what are the market opportunities offered by HPC and what are the entities in Luxembourg which could benefit also from these opportunities. So in the end, what we would like to achieve is also to provide a better targeted support to these entities so that they can adopt HPC in a quicker way. So that's why, in collaboration with LuxProvide, we've started this exercise to map the national market. And of course, I don't find the right arrows. Ah, c'est là, okay, pardon. So, why was it important to map the HPC market in Luxembourg? We had three objectives in mind. The first one was to understand the potential market for HPC in Luxembourg with a focus on both private and public users. And the mapping is a way to understand this market, but it's also a way to monitor the evolution of the market. So we have done this exercise once, but we intend to update this mapping so that we can see how the market is evolving over time. The second objective was to identify the different profiles of entities most likely to seize the current opportunities offered by HPC, to the view to provide them with a targeted support. And the third objective was to identify the main market drivers, but also the main market barriers for these entities. And so that we could work also at ecosystem level to leverage the opportunities and to address these barriers. So just a quick word on how we work on these mappings. We are used to work with the mappings, but it might not be clear to you what we mean with that. In reality, a mapping is a database of entities, public or private. So to build this database and then to be able to analyze it, we work in 3 steps. The first one was realized by the Market Intelligence Department, so building a database of all potential HPC users using different tools and selection criteria. I will precise some of them afterwards. So that the result of this first step is a list of all potential entities. This list was then reviewed by the experts in LuxProvide, which scored each entity based on its readiness or maturity to be approached and to discuss the opportunity to use HPC and to use Melixina in particular. And then based on this review, we've then added and enriched our database with different data related to the employees, to the sectors of activities, for instance, so that we could perform an analysis of the ecosystem as a whole. So before building our database, it was very important to define the scope of our mapping. The question we had was, who are the potential HPC users? What are the types of entities we want to map? So for this, we did an analysis of the current and future market trends with a focus on how the HPC will be applied and for which types of entities it will offer opportunities in the future. So because we're a bit short in time, I won't go through all the market trends. Just maybe 3 things we can retain. First one, good news, the HPC market is growing. You can see the numbers on the slides. And so the market is expected to grow and to hit around 65 billion in 2030. On the demand side, and you're probably also aware of that, the HPC market is dominated by large corporations, universities, government institutions. So they are, for the moment, the main users of HPC. However, we are also seeing a shift in the market from on-premise HPC to cloud-based HPC technology. And this does offer a window of opportunities for smaller companies, so small and medium-sized enterprise, so that they can also adapt this technology from an external provider. Based on applications, different sectors use the HPC. Currently, the market is led by the healthcare sector, closely followed by the government and defense sectors. And these 2 sectors are the ones which are expected to grow the most over the forecast period. So based on this market trend analysis, we have defined 3 profiles of the types of users we wanted to map. The first profile is related to entities which use, at the core of their business model, they use technologies to provide business solutions to their customers. So here, this refers to all companies using AI, IoT, big data, analytics as a key technology, so that they can then deliver services to their customers. So that's, for instance, for fintech companies using or implementing KYC solutions for their customers, or a medical enterprise using AI to analyze medical imagery. So to select or to identify the companies from this first profile, we focused our selection criteria on the key technologies which are used by the different entities. So I will not enter the detail of our methodology, but we can also discuss it afterwards if you wish. The second profile of potential HPC users we wanted to target were the companies who want to use HPC also for their internal use, so to improve their own performance, to improve their own operations, using the big amount of internal data they may collect on their process, and which, once analyzed, can help them to perform better. So to identify the entities belonging to the second profile, we have used as a proxy the size of the entities. So we've selected all entities having more than 250 employees. And we've used also the sector in which they are active, so referring to the different sectors we had in our market analysis. So, for instance, all the manufacturing entities, in banks, insurance companies, having more than 250 companies were selected. We have also used different other sources, and among others, the list of entities who have participated to research and innovation projects having a link to HPC. And because we also wanted to have an overview of the ecosystem, we added a third profile, which we call the enablers. And the enablers refer to all the entities which can support the others to adopt HPC. So this refers here to the consultant or training organization or different institutions which can help the Luxembourgish entities to adopt HPC. So that's, in this dashboard, you can have an overview of the main results of this mapping exercise. So in total, we have mapped 980 entities. 862 are potential users, and 182 are enablers. So if we focus on the potential users, a bit less of 10% of these potential users are public, so the rest are private entities. And we really wanted to catch these private entities because, as Anders mentioned, the focus of Meluxina is also to be open to businesses in Luxembourg. And among these private companies, almost 1/3 are startups. And we'll see a bit later how they are characterized. So the expert review from LuxProvide on this initial list allowed to identify that among the 862 users, more or less 1/3 of these companies could be considered as having a high or medium potential for HPC adoption in the short term. So I'd just like to focus on the two profiles and to understand a bit who are these potential businesses we have in Luxembourg who can be potential HPC users. So profile one are the companies using key technologies which could benefit from the HPC so that they could serve their customers better. So companies belonging to this first profile represent a bit less than half of the potential users. And among this population of profile 1, 1/3 was validated by LuxProvide, so 132 companies were identified as having a high or medium potential for HPC adoption. So if we consider the key technologies, there is no surprise. The most represented key technologies among these users is artificial intelligence, big data, data analytics. We can note, however, the importance of cybersecurity, which is also a good reflection of how rich the cybersecurity ecosystem is in Luxembourg. But one of the specificity of this group is the size of the entities. So as you can see on the graphic, 78% of these entities have less than 10 employees. So I'm already anticipating my conclusion, but we can see how important it's to see and to understand who are the potential users so that maybe services are then customized also that we can support better these entities to access HPC. Regarding the profile 2, so the entities who would use HPC probably for their own use or for their internal use to improve their processes, we have mapped 467 members. And this is a category where we find most of the public entities. So we have listed here 70 entities. Under these entities, we can find the hospitals in Luxembourg, for instance, which represent the healthcare sector. And the rest, so almost 400 entities, are private companies. So with no surprise, we've analyzed in which sectors these companies were active. We've used here the NAS code classification, which is not always optimum, but it may help. So the first or the most represented category are the professional, scientific, and technical activities. So this refers, for instance, to all the engineering companies or headquarter companies who may be in charge of the research activities for a corporate organization. Second, we find the financial insurance sectors and the manufacturing, information, communications are the sectors most represented in this group of potential HPC users. Among these potential users, LuxProvide has validated here again that almost 1/3 of this group are who may present a high or medium potential to adopt HPC. And here there is something I would like to highlight. If we focus only on the selected entities by LuxProvide, we can see in terms of sectors that the manufacturing sectors comes first. So this shows the maturity of some of our manufacturing companies to adopt or to have already adopted HPC. And while in terms in size, the distribution of the selected companies is more or less similar to the potential ones. Regarding the profile 3, we are still investigating and working on these mapped entities. They were not the priority. We wanted to focus more on the potential users, but we have mapped them, and there are also entities which we can use or contact so that they can help diffuse and promote the use of HPC in our ecosystem. So, as a conclusion, I think that from what we understood of who are the potential users of HPC in Luxembourg, we can highlight three main axes and coming challenges. The first one, as I already anticipated, because of the small size of a certain number of potential users, there is still lots of work to do in terms of raising awareness, especially among small and medium-sized companies. And the activities we've been delivering with the EuroCC project, for instance, are part of these awareness-raising campaigns. Trainings are also very important. Very often, small companies lack the technical expertise to use or to understand the benefits of HPC. So probably if we want to accelerate the adoption of HPC in Luxembourg, these two aspects are very important. And the masters, Anders was mentioning, is also part of these training activities. A second challenge is also to reduce the cost for entities, for companies to use HPC. Here again, the evolution of the market towards solutions called HPC as a market service are probably one of, or part of the solutions for companies to reduce the cost of adoption of HPC and to democratize its use. And the last challenge, and no surprise here again, but it may be particularly important for small and medium-sized entities. The security challenge is also very important. Some entities are reluctant to share some of their data because of security issues. And the question of the sovereignty of technological solutions is also something which is very important and which is currently being addressed, but it should be promoted also among the potential customers. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have questions, I will be here afterwards for the drink.
Thank you, Sarah. That was insightful. Thank you. There's a lot of potential, actually, for our organizations here in Luxembourg to explore to use of big data, artificial intelligence, and large-scale simulation on a supercomputer. Don't hesitate to speak to our HPC experts afterwards from LuxProvide and University of Luxembourg during the networking session. They are free, they are available to, to discuss with you ideas and potential uses of HPC to apply to your business or to your research, and they promise they will not charge today, at least. We are just half an hour late on our agenda, but we have a surprise for you today, so to wake you up a little bit, because we are losing someone here. So we connect with Francesco directly from Bissen, actually, for a visited and guided tour from Meluxina. Hello, Francesco. Hi. So where you want to start from to our visit?
Well, I will start, with giving you. I have the pleasure to give you a tour of Meluxina. So first, I'm here in the corridor of the LuxConnect data center. So for those of you who do not know me, I'm Francesco Mangiovanni. I'm the group leader of data services and compute at LuxProvide. I'm managing the awesome team who is taking care of Meluxina on a day-to-day basis. And I will give you, as I said, a tour of Meluxina. So I will just flip my camera. Hope that you can see it well.
Yes, so we confirm.
Perfect. So I'm going to go in the room. So Meluxina, as it was mentioned, is an implementation of the modular supercomputer that was pioneered by our dear colleagues at Jülich and Partec. So I will enter and give you a small tour of the different modules. So I will have, sorry about that, but I have to speak a bit louder because it's really loud in here. So, okay, first you can see the first view of Meluxina. It's a great design of the Atos Slack XH 2000. So I'm gonna just switch on the lights. There you go. So we wanted Meluxina early on to be very efficient in terms of power. So we opted for a DLC technology. So DLC standing for direct liquid cooling. So it means that the main components of compute nodes are directly water cooled. So here we have those Atos racks. They are different than regular racks in the sense that we can have nodes not only in the front but also in the back. So we have 13 of those racks. 6 of them are with CPU nodes. We have 573, well, actually 576 because we have test nodes obviously, of CPU only nodes where we have 2 processors, 2 AMD RAM with 64 cores each, so 128 cores, and so we have 6 of them in the first racks, and then after the main, I would say, or the second module of Meluxina is the GPU module, where we have the most of the power of Meluxina, and there we have 200 GPU nodes with each 4 NVIDIA Ampere A100 GPU accelerators for doing very heavy computation, very intensive computation, or very AI-driven computation. So let me first also quickly show you what it looks like in terms of the inside of the machine. So here we have 20 blades. So here, because it is the GPU, it's a GPU rack, we have only 1 node per blade because those 4 NVIDIA cards are taking some space. The CPU ones are a bit more dense. We have 3 nodes per blade. So we have here blades in the front and also blades in the back. And those are all water cooled. So everything is water cooled. Meaning also the power supply unit. So here, you can just close the door. So here we have the Meluxina design also with the light cyber effect, quite nice. So here the GPU part. And now I will walk you through the air-cooled part. So we have a water-cooled part and also an air-cooled part. So in the air-cooled part, we have also an important module of Meluxina, which is the storage module. So the storage, we have 3 file systems which we offer to the users. The first one, the tier 1, is has a net capacity that's very dense and very hot actually here. So it has half a petabyte of full NVMe drive, so very fast, high throughput I/O workloads. Then we have after, let me enter the filter. Then it is very nice. So here we have the storage zone. So very nice big boxes and all the servers. And we have the tier 2 has a net capacity of 12.5 petabytes. Then after we have the tier 3, the backup tier, where we have 7.5 petabytes. Okay, so they are all offering the raster file system, the parallel file system. And we have also what we call internally the tier 4, which is well, I cannot show it to you because it's in beta rule. It's the tape archive for disaster recovery, where we have 5 petabytes of net capacity. And we can go up to 100 petabytes depending on it. So there it's another data center independent. So the rest of the compute part, we have also the FPGA module and the large memory module, which are in those 4 racks actually. See? So here we have the large memory node, where we have per node 4 terabytes of memory, which is quite a lot, and for memory intensive workloads. On the bottom, we have also FPGA nodes. So for those of you who want to go really deep into emulating or simulating CPUs or very basic application, very remote of the hardware, we have like 20 of those nodes with
Francesco?
Yes?
Thank you. Can you speed up a bit, please?
Yeah, sure. I know that you wait. So those, I'm already finished. So we have large memory, we have the FPGA, we have also the cloud module, where we have 20 machines to offer the possibility for our customers to deploy collaborative tools and other user portal, user-facing portal. So, and we have also a service model where we can basically manage everything regarding Meluxina. So yeah, that's about a small quick tour of Meluxina, and I will just, I would say, finish on a nice view in the visitor corridor. Yeah. And there you go. And yeah, that's about it. So here is Meluxina. So very, very powerful machine. Hope that you enjoyed it. Yeah.
Thank you,
Want to
Francesco.
visit us? Welcome. Goodbye. Enjoy the round table.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
The mermaid is beautiful.
Hey,
Thank you for the design and for the tour. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
So I hope you enjoyed this virtual tour and it waked you a bit. And now we are not done. We still have more interesting discussions to come. Actually, our first round table to dive into the partnerships and funding opportunities for organizations that want to implement HPC projects and to boost their activities. So to help better understand who are the actors in the ecosystem and the support available in Luxembourg, we invite on scene for the first roundtable. We have a second one to discuss about applications and examples. But now we invite Pascal Bouvry, Professor of Computer Science at the University of Luxembourg, Special Advisor to the Rector in the matters of HPC, and Special Advisor to LuxProvide, and Coordinator of the European Master of HPC, as we have heard before. Then Josephine Wood, a Senior Program Officer at the EuroHPC Joint Undertaking. She's responsible for planning and developing the JEU's work program, overseeing relationships with the Commission and the governing board members, and supporting the work of Executive Director. Then we have Benoît Odjac, Head of Responsible Data Science and Analytics Unit at the Luxembourg Institute of Science and Technology. This unit is focused on trustworthy AI, human modeling, as well as visualization and interactive technologies. He is also leading the AIDA Lab, a technological infrastructure hosting the analytics platform and the visualization wall of LIST. Then Benjamin Questier, Director of R&D and Innovation Support at Luxinnovation. He coordinates the efforts of the team responsible for supporting Luxembourg companies and research institutes to translate their initiative into projects eligible for funding, either on national or European level. And then, last but not least, our keynote speaker, because we wanted to learn from him, still continuing to learn from him, from his experience and his knowledge. So thank you for joining here. Thank you for accepting our invitation. And let's start from my first question to Pascal Bouvry. So we've seen that HPC has been traditionally used for research. And well, there are also some large companies having a supercomputer on their premises. But what about the SMEs? How are SMEs using computing power, supercomputing power, and what is your experience working with them so far?
I don't know if the microphone is...
No, it's not working? How can we fix it?
Maybe I try to switch it on, it is working
Okay,
better.
now it seems to work.
So thank you. Yeah, I think it's a very good point on this SMEs, because as you've seen from the description of Sana, the idea is really that with many companies, up to 10 people, and you know that SMEs can be also much bigger in Europe, and definitely these companies cannot afford to buy their own HPC. So when we say that in Luxembourg we like really to focus on democratizing HPC, this is the right target. So we have two different things. First, we need to provide the machine, the access to the machine. The companies, for scientific reason, can access a EuroHPC machine, as has been shown by Anders, going for some calls and so on. But quite often the companies need to have access, I would say, a pay-per-use approach. So they say, okay, we have some needs now and we like to try this. We'd like to make a feasibility study. We'd like to make a proof of concept. And so here in Luxembourg, we got this instance of EuroCC bringing together Luxinnovation, University of Luxembourg, and LuxProvide. And the idea is to find the right set of partners, the right set also of the right context, maybe also using some help from the government if there is some need of R&D activity. And then the key is really the expertise. So that was also one of the lessons of the survey, saying that we need to bring more expertise, we need more talents, we need to increase the training. The master is there, but master will take some time. We need really to rely on the whole European network on this, and this is organized in a really star kind of architecture, so that we can not only access the expertise here in Luxembourg, but we can point also to experts in other countries. And what is also something that I like to highlight is that, in fact, people don't want HPC per se. They have a problem. They would like to solve something. They would like to develop a new kind of business. They have some data to analyze and so on. And this problem is domain specific. So we need really to go from the very hardware, technical, software expertise up to the domain expertise. And by EuroHPC, by the setup that we put in Luxembourg, we give this, and the whole ecosystem that we have here, we give some of the opportunity for the companies, for the small and medium-sized companies, to get access to this and really have some kind of booster of their activity.
Thank you. Now, indeed, I will ask the same question to our Prof. Lippert to see his experience with companies and how the ULIX Supercomputing Center, or you work with SMEs especially.
Yes, I think it was more or less nearly exhaustive what we have already heard. But I would like to give this another twist in the sense that we have to understand what is, so to say, the structure or the, let's say, environment of SMEs. So SMEs are more local than big ones. Yeah? And the big ones, of course, have a very distributed, let's say, setting. So they will touch at a certain point, they will be in contact with computing and supercomputing automatically. Yeah? While the SMEs, let's say, when they are in a more rural region or in a not very developed one, how can they, in some sense, get into contact? Of course, you can say today it's all virtual and we can do the internet, etc. That's one aspect, but that's not the traditional way SMEs work. They have their business contacts, they have the contacts in the region, and so on. And what we have to do is we have to develop a region-wise development of the SMEs. So since we have a hierarchical and a structure of supercomputing in Europe, from the big ones to the national ones, which all have their satellites somehow at universities, etc. Or we should build up at least where it's not the case. Yeah? We have the unique chance that we can, let's say, get into contact with SMEs at in any region if we want. Yeah? If we have the right setup. This is my experience because I'm coming with ULIX from a rural region, and we have set up a new initiative which becomes very successful now. It's called Agency for Cognitive Computing. Now you also see the other twist of it. It is not simulation, as you said before. They want much more from that. They want simulation. That's an aspect, and maybe the simulation is a software as a service for them, for many. But AI and new technologies to be included, that's what they want, and they need a support for this. So in this agency, we try to get specifically to the SMEs. Of course, we also have bigger ones, but it's specifically for SMEs. And the idea is to have this in a more or less structurally weak region, yeah, where we see in the future a transformation of employment, of how people work. Yeah? In our case, it's a coal mining. Coal mining will be stopped. Yeah? What do you do? Of course, you cannot transform the coal mining people towards IT experts. But this is a much longer, let's say, process. We believe that if we have the right, let's say, setting the right convincing transfer of competence of, let's say, a research center like we have into, let's say, into the practical world. And that's why we need the agency, that we can do exactly what we want to get AI. And of course, within AI, you have the simulation, you have modeling, etc., through the support into these SMEs. That's a long-term process, but I'm sure there is lots of ideas that we can follow here.
Thank you. And speaking about organizations that can support and partnerships that can support these organizations, SMEs in particular, to implement the supercomputing in their activities. What can the University of Luxembourg and LuxProvide do for SMEs? And especially from your perspective, Pascal, like you are both professor at the university and board member for LuxProvide. How do you see these two entities in Luxembourg collaborating with each other, and what are the main differences and complementarities, and how can both support our ecosystem of SMEs?
Okay, so for me, both are pretty different. So with the university, it's an academic institution, it's targeting excellence in research, excellence in education. LuxProvide is a private company, so it has been funded by the government, but the idea is really to have a production machine targeting the industry in the economy. So now, if the companies are coming, and most of the companies are really newcomers in this HPC business, they do need both aspects. They do need a bit of research, and at the same time, something that people who will really understand them and turn research and the scientific discourse into how to make profit, how to cut costs, how to go faster, and so on. So this is the way it's working. I think that usually we talk about TRL, so technology readiness level, that can go from 1 to 9, depending if the project is more fundamental or more applied or in production. And there we have the university, we have the list, and we have companies like LuxProvide, and also all other companies here on the market. I'm thinking about Post, CBRC, about Proximus. I can give you tons of these companies, and in the list there were also, I think, hundreds of enablers. So these companies can also play a role. So the idea is to look at what is the TRL level of what the committee would like to do. Also, what I would like really to highlight is that usually, again, the companies do not come by saying, or not many, saying, okay, I have a HPC problem and I like to run this on the computer. Most companies say, okay, I would like to develop a new drug. I would like to develop a new material. They have real business needs, and they already have things running. Even if they are SMEs, they do have part of their data, I don't know, on AWS, part of the data on a data center in Luxembourg, part of the data in OVH, and so on. And they're already using some computers. They do have their workstations, they do have their software license, and they would like to know, okay, now how can I really boost my business by using this HPC, and this is done by the two sides, on the research side and looking at the parallelization of the code and so on, but also more on the, let's say, software architecture side and how to migrate progressively to this. I think that Marco Grotz already introduced the fact that Luxembourg is very active also into cloud computing. We are in Gaia X. We are looking at how to play a role also at the European level, the European Commission, on how to bridge things together. And the keys are there. So it's not just the HPC, it's the whole ecosystem and the whole set of expertise enabling this. The beauty now for the companies is this EuroCC, because they just have one single point of contact at each country. So they just somehow, between quotes, have to contact us, and we will help and guide them to say, okay, you can contact this professor because it's more, let's say, research-oriented, or we can provide you this consultant inside LuxProvide, or here, I don't know, it's about sensors. Maybe there are other companies providing sensors on the market and these kind of things. And last but not least, also, wow, this is very subtle, let's say, question. And the expert, I don't know, is in Madrid, and we can come to the expert.
Great. So speaking about partnerships again, you mentioned lists, and we have here a representative, Benoit. Thank you for being here. We understood that you can help somehow with HPC. What is LIST doing in the domain of high-performance computing, data analytics, and AI?
So thank you very much for having invited me first. As Pascal has already mentioned, the ecosystem in Luxembourg is already quite rich with various kind of actors. We have the university, we have LuxProvide, and of course LIST too. So our position at LIST is quite clear in the sense that on one hand, we are users of supercomputing. We have one in LIST, and we have also, of course, the one at the national level. I have colleagues in environmental sciences, material sciences who are running simulation. In the classic sense, so of course, they are users of, let's say, supercomputing. On the other hand, more in the IT department in which I am, I think we are very complementary in the sense that also two main topics that have already been mentioned. On one hand, AI, in which we are, let's say, have a quite decent team, let's say. That's really something in which we also have some expertise and we want to focus, which is complementary to supercomputing. It has already been mentioned that it's definitely something, let's say, on top of, let's say, simulation. Another part, and I've appreciated very much your talk too for the visualization part, because I'm this guy. And at some point, you need to communicate to someone. May it be analyzing the data, showing the results of whatever the results are. And also in LIST, we are working on, say, visualization for almost 20 years now. And we also have this visualization world that is quite powerful, quite unique also in the Great region. And for instance, now we are running currently a project with Meluxina to try to see how much it could be connected between the visualization world at least and the HPC at LuxProvide. So that's really a complementary role compared to the other actors in the ecosystem.
I see. And so how would you help companies to understand, if possible, to integrate HPC into their activities with your expertise? How would you collaborate with them?
So also, as Pascal said, sometimes we use these theoretical scales, or let's say the level of maturity of the technologies and when we intervene. And definitely, of course, fundamental research, lower theoretical levels, are mainly for the university, that's quite clear. LIST, globally speaking, is really positioned in the mid-scale. So theory, let's say, applied research, more or less applied research from theory, let's say, I don't know, 3 to 6, 7, something like this. Higher tier level are for private companies, private business. It's not for LIST. We have the private companies to do that. And our role is really to try to identify needs, the innovation needs of the companies, large and small. And I have, let's say, partners in the room that are, we are collaborated with them. And we have also set up a kind of a methodology that we have called, let's say, business assessment model, in which we try to talk to the company, see what they need, and say, okay, is it more for the business side, and it's not for us? Is it really technological innovation? In this case, it's maybe for us. And if it's more, let's say, fundamental research in supercomputing, that's not something we are doing in LIST. I mean, that's for other actors. Yeah.
Great. That's nice to know that there are some other actors to be there to help the SMEs to explore the possibilities of HPC, how would be integrated into their day-to-day work, and what could bring in the future in terms of benefits, of course. So now that we've seen the possibility to partner between SMEs, companies, and HPC providers, what would be the help in terms of money that these companies to explore, to to see what are, yes, it's for Benjamin, the question. What would be the funding opportunities, the help they could get for exploring and innovating?
So thank you for having me here, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share that we do also something else than just money, right? And what's very important for the Innovation Agency, that is our mission, is to help you companies to innovate so that you are ready for tomorrow. And the first step is really to reach out to expertise that you don't have in-house and that people can help you to develop and understand. And in that sense, if you don't know to whom you want to reach out, then you can reach out to EuroCC, to Ramona, or to our experts or advisors that can help you in the different steps, either to get to know the partnerships, to get to know the expertise, or even to identify the correct expertise. And it's only then when we help you as an agency to identify your priorities, where you want to develop, what are the real opportunities, then we can start to talk about different funding schemes on European level, which Josephine will explain for sure, and on national level. So on national level, we mainly will speak today about funding schemes that are managed by the Ministry of Economy that are eligible for companies in Luxembourg. Starting, for example, with the SMEs, there are some aids dedicated for external consultant support, for expertise that you won't have in-house, that would enable you to have a first assessment of where do you stand on digital maturity, what can you do, what kind of data do you have, is there a possibility, is there an interest for your company to go towards HPC or calculations, right? There are different steps. What are the kind of technologies that you want to develop? Which kind of areas are we talking about? Visualization, modelization, but maybe also even data analytics, modeling, machine learning, and AI. So that's important to keep in mind. Then for all companies in Luxembourg, we're talking about large companies, but small companies, we have feasibility studies. Feasibility studies is to help you to get to a proof of concept, saying that you have an idea, you have the capacities to do it, but you're not sure if it's worthwhile to go for a fully fledged R&D project like Benoit just mentioned it before. And there is support for that kind of activities. And the next step would be to go to a full R&D project with different funding aids, with different amounts, and that depends on the status of your company, where you want to go, etc. And here the result, of course, would be a new product, a new process, something that you bring new into the market. These are the main activities that exist that probably most of you already know. All the information is also available online, but we are glad to reach out to you or get in contact with you to help you individually on each stage. A particular point that I would like to mention today, and that probably will be more officially announced later, is that there is an interest by the Ministry of Economy and by the National Research Fund, with the support of Luxinnovation, to launch a joint call on national level. A joint call for HPC and data analytics. What we are looking for is for collaborative research between private organizations and public institutions to submit a project proposal that can be funded by the two legal entities here in Luxembourg. To give you some idea of a time frame, we're talking about a call that would open in September. We would go into 2 steps. First steps, a very small proposal, 1 or 2 pager. You share your interest, where you want to go, what you want to do, what your capacities are, and what kind of impact you're looking for. And after first assessment, you would be called for, if selected, of course, we're talking about competitive research, we would go for a full proposal application with probably results early next year and a launch before the summer next year. So maybe afterwards I can share more information on that if you're interested. We also have some experts working on it that are here in the room that can help you to inform you. But these are the opportunities mainly at Luxinnovation on national level.
Exciting. Are you ready to apply? So how Luxinnovation actually, what is the help, practical help that these companies that would like to apply, for instance, to this call, would you give to them?
Yes, so as I said in the beginning, you leave your contact details here today over the internet to the EuroCC team or to myself or to members of the R&D support department. We will assess with you what's really possible, where you want to go, what are your capacities, and then in the second step we would lay out the different funding schemes that are available, what's the most interesting for your company. And the interesting part is that we would directly look on national level but also on European level, because in the same department we have people who are specialized in a Horizon Europe program and some other European programs. We are national contact points on these programs. We know which topics are available, and those of you the joint undertaking as well, so we can make you a kind of short list, discuss with you what your maturity is, does it make sense for you to apply, what are the risks, what would be the timeline, etc., and accompany you all the steps until you're successful. If not the first time, for sure the second time.
Great, thank you, thank you. Thank you for all the support Luxinnovation is providing to companies and all the teams that are behind this support. So given that we have discussed about national and European funding, so Euro-HPC joint undertaking has a budget of 7 billion for the period 2021-2027. But what are the priorities? Where would you like to act more to bring more value for the European ecosystem and for companies?
So, thank you very much for the question, and thank you very much for this really practical, down-to-earth discussion, because where Anders and I sit, we feel a bit high up in the sky, and this is really great to listen to the realities of how you actually get users to HPC and actually to do something useful with them. What are our focuses on? Well, basically the priorities that Anders set out just now, I think, are very clear. We have indeed 7 billion allocated to us, but let's be very clear. It's actually 3.1 billion from the European Union, from programs like Horizon Europe, Connected Europe Facility and Digital Europe Programme, 3.1 billion from the participating states of the European Union, so a little bit of that will come from Luxembourg, and 900 million from our private members. So it's not quite simply you have 7 billion. If you are going to apply for one of our projects, you have to, and I think there are a few people in the room who are experts on this, you have to convince the European Commission, you have to convince the national beneficiaries who will hopefully give you a contribution, and if all goes well, you can also give in-kind contribution if you're coming from the private sector. Our 3 goals are very clear. We have a 10-year plan. It's set out in a multi-annual strategic plan. We need to procure and build and run supercomputers, and we've done that already for Luxina with the Luxembourg government, and we're very grateful for that, and I think it's going quite well from everything I hear. Yes, good. Nods from the front row, so I'm happy. We're also developing research and innovation of hardware, software, applications, and also continue to help develop technologies that will support future machines. Thomas mentioned that earlier, and that's very important that we develop European technologies for future European machines. And last but not least, and this is what the subject of today's discussion is, access to our supercomputers. And when I say our, I say collectively our. They're not just the JUs, they're everybody's. And the point is that they're a public good, and we need to make sure they're accessible to everybody who needs them or wants to use them. Our focus in the JU, to be very clear, however, is the public sector scientists. And in this case, in Luxembourg, their focus will be scientific as well, but obviously also the private sector. We have a number of closed calls, which I'm not going to go through, but basically Luxembourg was the winner of one of the closed calls, which is to host and procure a supercomputer. And we have a number of upcoming calls, which may not touch the companies that are sitting in this room directly, but maybe indirectly you could well benefit from these calls. I think that's the best way to present it. I'm looking at my boss. Yeah, he's nodding. All is well. Good. The first one is actually to renew EuroCC Luxembourg, because I don't know if you know, but it's coming up for the end of its mandate. And hopefully, if they apply, we're about to launch a call to update all our national competence centres across the European countries that have them, to make sure that the good work that's been started here continues into the future. We are also on the, and that's, I think, I'll talk about that a bit more later, we're also on the procurement side of the story, because that's what it is, the Holy Grail: procurement, infrastructure, research, users, okay? So we've done users first. On the infrastructure, we are we are in the final stages of identifying the hosting entities for the next generation of supercomputers, so the exascales and the mid-range supercomputers. And following that, we will be procuring the new machines. So again, indirectly, you or companies like you across Europe could benefit from those machines as well. And then we're also, for the current machines, about to launch a call to upgrade supercomputers. Now, I don't know where Luxembourg is on that one, but the point is that we've already got 8 supercomputers coming online. They may need a bit of upgrading to make sure that they are at the height of the technology, and I'm not going to comment on that because I'm not the techie here. There are others who can do that better than me. And we have a nice little research program to try and identify different algorithms that will help the software applications to improve software applications for those who actually want to use the supercomputers. There's a nice call going on that, and we hope that many organizations from research, and maybe SMEs can apply, because we need better algorithms to make sure the applications run better on our machines. And last but not least, and this is probably not so interesting for the companies, but definitely for the researchers, we have rolling calls to access the supercomputers across the different countries. So those are the programs that are ongoing. And then in the future, because it's not just about the current, looking after the old calls, managing the current calls, it's the future. Subject to our governing board's confirmation, we have in our work plan the ambition to launch a second call for a second exascale supercomputer. We would like to strengthen training and skills in the HPC sector. I think it's been mentioned over and over again just now that to get everybody up and the competences up, we need more training, more skills. Pascal has launched the master's call, but we need to build on that to make sure that as many users and non-users who want to go into ICT also develop their skills in HPC, so that we build a European ecosystem which is strong in this area. At the moment, it isn't. We are also looking and thinking about how we can also cooperate internationally in HPC, and we're thinking about a call in international cooperation in R&I activities around HPC. And last but not least, and as I said, we're thinking this is in the future, and we'll touch on it if we have time. We might touch on it later, but I don't think we'll have time. It's how we actually take advantage of the fact that we have all these different computers across the European Union, how to connect them up so that, a simple example, if an SME in, I don't know, Spain wanted to use Meluxina, they could do so without physically having to leave Spain. So it opens up the opportunities, and I'm looking at my colleague Sarah, who in her analysis was looking at Luxembourg opportunities, but if we can connect the machines up, hopefully there will be opportunities for SMEs across the European Union and not just in Luxembourg to use the Meluxina computer. So that's what we're doing for the future. I think I'll stop here. I think I've spoken enough.
Thank you.
And thank you again for having me here.
Thank you very much. Now, thinking about what you said, so you are planning to connect all these EuroHPC systems that you have. We have a question that is more difficult, and of course we'll ask to the most expert, one of the most experts, Prof. Lippert. So traditionally we have HPC systems that were focused mainly on intensive computing, but right now, as is already mentioned, we are transitioning and towards data, and especially big data come more and more into play with artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms. So you have big data and you have HPC centers. Should we move big? So we know that big data is difficult to move, right? So what should we do? Should we move these HPC centers to the data, to the big data, or the big data to the centers? Or what should be the most efficient way to bring them together?
Can I just do a double act with Thomas here? So I'm going to give you why the politicians think it's a good idea, and maybe Thomas can give us the scientific idea. How about that? Is that?
I'm totally apolitical, as you know.
Exactly. Our regulation requests that we procure and then connect supercomputers, and we've got the funding to do that. So we will do that. Our job is to implement the rules of our masters and political leaders, and that is one of the things that they've requested us to do. From a non-tech perspective, it makes sense. If I was coming from a part of Europe that is very far away from a supercomputer, to be able to connect into it somehow would be useful. But it also, if I understand it correctly, is about how much data and where the data is located. So on that point, I will move on to Thomas, who can then follow up. Thank you.
So from the scientific and technical point of view, you have, of course, a diversity of reasons for that. So just take, for instance, one example, if you have rare diseases in hospitals. Though you have a lot of hospitals, but in each of those you have only a few cases. You would like to bring those data together. Already this is a problem. I will refer to your political, it's a political problem because the laws to do that are not really there all over Europe. Here we have one field of problems. On the other hand, to solve it, we need technologies that we still do not really have fully developed. Maybe Google has it, just to tell you, yeah. But we in Europe we don't, yeah. That's an important point. If you talk about large data and heterogeneous data, the larger the data are, of course, the more compute they need to be analyzed. It's clear that you cannot just talk about large data or big data on the one hand, and on the other hand, not having the compute technologies. So that's one point. But what we really need is to have different data repositories to be connected. This requires lots of, let's say, background technologies. Like, for instance, knowledge technologies, so-called knowledge graphs. I'm coming from the Human Brain Project, where exactly this was, or is, a major problem. Knowledge graphs that allow you to connect the different repositories that are at different, let's say, locations. Yeah? Take the 5 largest current supercomputing centers in Europe. They are all belonging to this, let's say, bunch of centers. The problem is, if you want to compute something, you cannot just shift data somewhere, or you might not have the right compute technologies where you want to compute the data. You have to have a very careful system orchestrated that allows you to optimize this situation. Yeah, so that you only shift those data that you want to bring together. Let's say on the one hand, you would need meteorological data, and on the other hand, you would need health data. Because you might have the question, how does the climate situation influence certain diseases? Yeah? How do you do that? Of course, you have to ask the question, which data you better move where, and would you have then the technologies to correlate and to let those data work together to be analyzed. Yeah? So this requires a lot of background technologies. One is a very safe and secure authentication and authorization system. We have that. It's existing. Several organizations have it, but they have to interoperate, of course, yeah? So that you do not have to give your credentials everywhere, yeah? So that you have to give your credentials once, and it must be safe. That's one thing. This has to be finally just brought together. That's my view on it, yeah? But the question is, who is authorized to bring this together? You are, yeah? That's a very important point. You want to answer that?
Well, I just want, all I want to do is just a point of information that the European Commission has exactly thinking this through. And I don't know if you saw, but last week they adopted a proposal on a health data space, which I still need to work out how we fit in, high performance computing fits into that story, but that's exactly what they've done. They're proposing, it's not been adopted by the countries yet, a legal framework to be able to do what you're describing.
The next question is, do we really understand how this interplay between infrastructures as service entities, which the supercomputer centers are, how we federate them? I believe we do. Then comes the understanding of the whole chain of it. What is a platform as a service? Yeah? So most people intermix the infrastructure as a service with the platform as a service, with the software as a service, with the solutions as a service. This is clearly and reasonably defined in layers. And we have to understand that there are layers. So also the politicians should understand finally, otherwise they will not be able to do something reasonable in terms of funding. So that's very important. So I think with EuroHPC, and now comes HPC and the related technology into play, HPC is not just a big machine. HPC requires you today to have a periphery of storage, you know it. You have to have a periphery of diversity of storage. For instance, you also need an object-oriented storage, which typically is the storage periphery of a cloud system. Together with that, you have a cloud compute system. Yeah? All of this requires a safe, let's say, access technology, which we also have developed. So the real question all over Europe is, do we accept that through EuroHPC and its organizations this exists. So that's the first thing. Or does some people mean, let's redevelop it again, because we always want to redevelop some things which already exist elsewhere, especially they exist also with the hyperscalers. So be careful that they don't just take over everything. That's the next problem. Now comes the platforms. Are they clearly defined? I personally know one platform very well, which is a human brain project, not eBrains, by the way, human brain project. I know this platform very well, and how it acts as a platform, how it connects to the next layer. And I know also what are the requirements as to software as a service in the field, because not all researchers require that. Only those that use the software quasi as a tool which exists, yeah, which you could also buy somehow, but maybe not on this level. The others need only the platform because they constantly have to redevelop their software every day, otherwise they are not competitive. And on top of that, you can talk about solutions, but this is a sort of, I think, high-level talking, yeah? Of course, the solutions somehow comply with the problem, yeah, that you want. You have a problem, and finally, if you know that you have steps to solve it, you bring together the different components in the solutions. If we have understood that, in my opinion, we have a clear separation of the different layers. We know what we can do on the lowest layer. We know which platforms have to be funded and should be funded, and how, finally, those platforms, they have to know themselves how they produce their softwares and their solutions.
So we see there's still a lot of work to be done.
You know, I consider this as very complex, and it makes no sense to discuss this on a superficial level. It's very difficult to understand how it goes. But I'm also convinced that organizations like AWS, like Amazon, like Microsoft Azure, like Amazon, they know exactly how this works. Yeah. But they won't tell you, they even won't talk to each other, because it's a highly competitive field.
So as you can see, this is work for the future, and it's a big discussion that we need to
Just
have.
the beginning here.
Exactly. So thank you, Thomas. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Grotz.
Can I just do a little plug? If you want to know what we have been doing in European HPC, we've got this great little brochure that's been produced last week. There's a few copies outside. Please help yourselves. And it's also great to explain to your kids what supercomputing is all about, or non-experts. So please have a look at that. And if you want extra ones, I can send them to Ramona, who can circulate them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So just to conclude with the last question, given that we have been talking again about machines, we'd like to understand more the difference between our machines here in Luxembourg. So we have LuxProvide and we have the machine of the University of Luxembourg. Could you, Pascal, rapidly highlight the main features of the two of them?
So it's a good question, because indeed we see HPC everywhere, and with Thomas in praise, we know how it works in terms of different tiers and so on. So it's the tiers are completely the opposite from data center tiers. So in data centers, tier 4 is the top. In European wording, the tier 0 is the top. So it's the biggest machine. This will be the exaflopic machine, and we are talking about 600 million euro kind of projects. Then we have the pre-exaflopic machine. We are talking about, I think, around 200 million euro project. We are talking about a national machine and petaflopic machine like Meluxina, and we are talking about 30 million euro project. We are talking about university or research centers level project, and we are talking 2-3 million euro project. And then we can continue like that, and we can continue to workstation where it's 50K. We can continue to notebook where it's maybe 1,000 and so on. So it's really a continuum. And the idea is that if tomorrow I have a student, maybe we will not provide full access to the exaflopic machine like this. And we like maybe to train her or him and check that the scalability of the application is there. If you want to apply for the EuroHPC access, it's also about that. So you need to show that your program is sound, your scientific approach is sound, but also that the algorithmic that you have behind can take advantage of the machine. The one that we have at the university is also slightly different in terms of hardware. So I'm more currently on CPU focus, while Meluxina is more on the GPU focus. So there is some difference in kind of let's say, more AI-oriented and more classical simulation-oriented approach. That's again, the modular kind of architecture. And last but not least, I would say that now we have this very nice MOU between the university and LuxProvide. And the way it's going to be is that, so LuxProvide is really the production center oriented towards the industry, and the university will explore new kind of modules. So we'll explore what quantum computing can bring, what neuromorphic computing can bring, and so on. Looking forward, making some nice MOU also with Jülich, with the vendors, and so on, to go and exploring what the future will be, so that when I hope that the country will buy Meluxina 2. I'm looking at the decision makers. So when buying the Meluxina 2, we will know exactly also what kind of modules will be interesting for the country and really having impact on the industry.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Pascal. Thank you all the other panelists for sharing their vision, their recommendations, and their knowledge with us. Thank you for the inspiration, for inspiring our public, and hope that there will be plenty of ideas and plenty of projects that will come up. Let's have now a short break because all of us need it. We are really late, actually. So there you will find in the hall some, no, what? Yes, it's the break. Okay, yeah. They find the videos outside. We'll find the videos outside of the examples of HPC applications. So let's meet here in 7 minutes. Yes, working my microphone now. Welcome back. Here we are with our last panel discussion with our 4 panelists for a discussion about their experience with supercomputers in their businesses. So these are companies using supercomputing power. To understand how they are used, and they are still using HPC, when they understood they needed it, and how they decided to go for it. So I have here with me Jean-Christophe Witz, Chief Innovation Officer of Husky Technologies, recently double awarded as CEO of the Year 2022 and Cloud Innovation Project of the Year. Then we have Gabriele Pozzetti, Manager in Artificial Intelligence and Data Science at Ceratizit. He's passionate about human-centered digital solutions and believes that they are the key for a more sustainable and even more exciting future. Then we have Joël Grotz. He works at Satellite Communications Engineer for SES in different roles, including development of satellite broadband systems, satellite payload engineer, and responsible on procurement. And now he's currently working as Senior Manager at SES on the development of the Dynamic Resource Management System for Novel Flexible Satellite System. And Laurent Daudet, co-founder and Chief Technology Officer at LightOn, the startup that unlocks extreme scale machine intelligence. He also has authored and co-authored more than 200 scientific publications and has been a consultant to very small and large companies, and is co-inventor in several patents. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the audience for keeping up until the end. We'll try to do our best to finish on time. So let's start from our, actually, Christoph Witz, to understand what is ASCII doing with a supercomputer, and if you could explain it for people that are not experts in the HPC.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks.
So Husky, we are a machine manufacturer, so we are building very big equipment for industries. And basically those equipments, are most of them one-off. So we are selling like, 500, 600 a year. But they are very large and very complex and obviously very expensive. So we, as a company, are engineered. So we need to provide to our customers, those solutions that are, highly reliable, but as well, highly performing. And the only way to do that is using, FEA analysis, so finite element analysis, in order to look at the mechanics, to look at the injection side, because we are injecting plastic, and all this is about rheology. So the ability to inject plastic at a certain speed, at a certain temperature, and a certain, quality. So we are doing all this finite element analysis in order to better, get performance for our equipment overall. And the usage of supercomputers is really to speed up our capacity in order to, perform as an equipment provider. So that's really in ballpark what we are doing as Husky.
Great, thank you. So you had some slides you wanted to show,
oh,
maybe
yeah.
an example of visualizing what
okay.
it is?
Yeah, so everyone see that. So basically the use cases are, pretty simple. So the machine that we are selling is the one on the top. And basically we have 3 main use cases for HPC. So the first one is to speed up our R&D research and development stream. So usually it's 18 to 24 months timeline in order to do R&D, and we are doing tests. We are producing first machines, and in order to speed up the R&D cycle, so it's required to do iteration and prototype, not for real, but really in a simulation. And the second use case is really a customization of solutions. So we are producing very specific solutions for customers. And the last piece is really around service, so predictive analytics eventually. But we really started at the R&D area. And what you see on the top right is the simulation of what we'll call a hot runner. So it's where we are melting plastic and distributing basically the plastic through channels. And this is enabling us to design the hardware the right way. So if we do FE analysis the right way with our current computers, so it's around, let's say a week to make a simulation. And this week of simulation, it's at a very small scale, meaning that we are not able to design and to validate the full mold. It's just a subset. So with the supercomputer, right now we are making the first test, but what we are seeing is that instead of weeks, it's going to be hours in order to get the outcome. And the most important piece, which we never be able to do before, is to do that at scale. So if you imagine that we have a mold where we need to test 96 positions, so when you produce closures, when you produce any parts, you need to produce many at the same time. And usually the standard simulation, we are doing one simulation, one drop at a time. And here we believe that we can do 96 at the same time, meaning that we can simulate everything within less than a week, which is pretty great because that will help us to reduce as well our development cycle and get much better quality later on in the development of our tools and solutions.
Looks amazing, the difference. I mean, in what you can do without a supercomputer and with a supercomputer. Thank you for the example. Let's get a tour to introduce everyone what is really doing with HPC. So, Gabriele, the same question. What are the applications for supercomputer in your company?
If I learn now to use the computer, yeah, that's fine. Okay, so we are a leader in the hard material industry. Basically, we are taking tungsten and other refractory metals, things you need a supernova to create, so very rare material, to create products that can perform under a very high stress in very difficult conditions. And this is needed to basically create the precision that is now needed by our, for example, food, but also medical or transport industry. So I think that's the last animation I'll play because I need more hands otherwise. We are around since 100 years, and there were 100 years of quite challenges and innovations. And I guess the first buzzword I will use today is the adventure we are on in the current moment, that is digitalization, right? So how do we transform a century of experience in something that is digital? And that's where the collaboration with the Hpc of the University of Luxembourg was playing, I think, an important role. As you see, we are a mid-size European and international company. We have branches in US and in Asia as well. And the big challenge in digitalization for a company of medium size, let's say the bigger the company gets, the bigger the challenge will become, is that in order to digitalize, you have to basically be able to try new things fast, but at the same time you need to go through these new digital opportunities that you don't really know what they are, harmoniously with all your working force. And those are two aspects that are often in conflict. You cannot change too much from one day to the other as a company, but you have to try a lot of things to see what fits. And when a company gets bigger, the challenge is even more complicated because bigger companies have a more refined culture that is partially embedded in their infrastructure. So at the end of the day, you need to be able to try even more things, even more way of innovating, even more way of creating new products. And that's basically what we partner with the university for, is to get access to these HPC resources in a way that allows us not to commit to a rigid infrastructure and at the same time not to commit to a cloud provider that locks in this way in their ecosystem. And this allows us to try a lot of new things very fast, while at the same time evolve as a company with the right pace. Right. The two main applications were or success stories of this collaboration will be on one side virtual prototyping, what we were already discussing with. So virtual prototyping for a company that has a good culture in running experiment and improving its product with experiments could represent, well, for us, we are talking about doing prototyping roughly 20 times cheaper and 50 times faster. So what you would require you more or less a year to do, you can do that in 1 week. That's kind of the idea. And even more importantly, the reason why it was so good to be together with the university in this first trial is that you are able to run new pieces of software that brilliant university scientists are developing, so new ideas, on similar architecture or where those models were developed. And this basically allows to run and try a lot of those that some of which will be good, some of which will be let's say interesting for somebody else, to put it that way, but your ability of trying a lot of them means that you can then drive it to your product development. And there is a really good research in Europe, really good research in Luxembourg that could be converted to something like a meaningful patent for your field, but you need to be able to try it fast. The second aspect, since it's actually in my job description right now, is to try new technologies. And the second buzzword, let's bring it again, that is artificial intelligence. You have a lot of people suggesting you that you have to try and shame you if you don't try. But as a company, it's very important to first manage to understand what this can mean for you as a company. And for example, be able to try a lot of different things. Let us understand that there are some fields in which artificial intelligence can really revolutionize the way we approach problems. For example, it can really machine learning technology in particular can really be a powerful allies to allow us using more recycled material without compromising in our quality. And this is something that we managed to discover by trying a lot, thanks to HPC.
Thank you, Gabriele. It's impressive, the difference. What's, again, the X times you improve your activities. Now, let's go to Joël Grotz to understand how SES uses the supercomputer.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Ramona. So at SES, we had the opportunity to be one of the first users and applications of the supercomputer. So we're really glad that we had that opportunity. The application that we had is related to our new generation of satellites. So we have basically, you have to imagine that the satellites, the traditional satellites, are nothing compared to what we are buying today. Today, the satellites, they're completely configurable and programmable. They are extremely flexible. And we need to adapt them to the real user needs on a very flexible manner. And this implies that we have to develop a software that is capable of doing that. And in order to do that really efficiently, we found out that basically in the type of satellites that we're currently buying, for example, SES 17 has 170 beams over all of the Americas and Atlantic. And our users are fixed and mobile, so the traffic demand changes really constantly. And in order to optimize this, we would need to run an optimization algorithm very often and very efficiently. This in the type of prototype or optimization algorithm solutions that we have takes a long time, or we need a lot of compute power to solve that. And it really is a challenging problem to solve. So for the most difficult parts of those, we are collaborating with University of Luxembourg, and we were doing this research since quite some time. So here we had the opportunity to try a few of those algorithms on the Luxina supercomputer. And for the examples that we tried, we really found out that there's a significant benefit of using, of course, dedicated hardware for this. So the particular problem that we analyzed, the optimization problem that we analyzed, normally took hours, and here we managed to scale it to a few minutes. And that is because of the additional compute power that we had with Luxina on this particular problem. And we're building this software also really commercially. Of course, first in a very proven manner. So we have cloud partners. We're partnering with Microsoft Azure. And we're building this software also commercially to operate as a 17 and O3B mPower to configure these beams in real time. But of course, we're going to do that in a progressive manner so that we have proven algorithms that we are going to use commercially. And for the most challenging algorithms, we will first explore them in a partnership with university and research, and then progressively bring them into use.
Thank you. So we'll come back to your collaboration with University Luxina, but let's go to the last example for Laurent today. So explain us, please, how do you use a supercomputer in your business?
Hello, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to present what we do at Lighton. And I know it's late tonight, and you're all very tired, so I'm going to talk about something that's very simple to understand. It's about language. And everyone speaks about, language speaks to everyone, literally. And we do this, what's called extreme scale language model. So we are, Lighton, we're a startup based in Paris. I used to be in a past life university professor at the physics university, physics department in Paris. And in the last 6 years, I've done, co-founded Lighton to do this extreme scale AI. So just to give you an example of what we do, this is this new generation of AI. You literally write what you want. Write a professional email to Tom Sanders, a salesman at a laser company. You click on generate, and bing, it generates an email, a full email, very good English. Or it invents a way of using this laser. Or if you're not happy with that, you click on generate, and it will generate another email, or you can do it as many times as you want until you are happy with that, or you can edit and so on. So this is one example. It can do even more sophisticated things like make an Instagram ad for Atmosphere Resort, a resort in the Philippines, and so on. And please insist on the fact that it's a luxury hotel and that you are going to do diving there. And click. That's it. You have your Instagram ad. Very good English. The AI has understood that you want to do some Instagram ad, as it said in the last sentence. You see the idea of diving on luxury there. So it makes exactly what you want. You have an AI assistant that's perfect with text. And so at Lighton, we do things also in different languages, not only English, and for those who understand French. Okay, this is the same in French, where just for the example, I took some newspaper article about real estate in Paris in Le Figaro magazine, like a typical newspaper magazine, journal. And then I asked the AI to continue the article. So I put the first few lines, and then it continues the article, and you can see it continues the same style. Like it quotes some experts. It has invented an expert, Eric Legendre. There is no Eric Legendre in AXA Real Estate, I checked. And it can go on for pages and pages. So I think there's something happened, and these things did not exist 2 years ago. It's really, really something new. And it can do the other way around. Instead of generating long text, it can do summarization of text. So we have this example where we take an article from Le Monde or whatever, and you put the web address, and it gives you a one-line summary that's just as good as the one-line summary that's below the title. So how to build a language model? Okay, so just because I'm university professor, sorry, I have to teach something to you, and maybe you are interested in what's inside. So you need some ingredients, you need some tools, you need some recipe to do a language model. So in terms of ingredients, you need training corpuses. So what's something that's very different from the deep learning generation that you had in the last decade is that it's unlabeled data. You take just raw text, but raw text at massive scale. When I say massive, they say it's civilization scale in the sense that we train on tens and billions of words, which for the language model that we have, it's the equivalent of 2 million books. 2 million books is how many books you have in the French library national library, right? I think they have 10 million books, but it's the same order of magnitude that you have in the national libraries. Like insane amount of data, but it is raw text. We take books, we take internet crawl, we take anything. And then you have to use, well, that's why I'm here. We need to use some of the world's best supercomputers, HPC. We really want the GPU ones, the one with GPU, and very good interconnect between the GPUs as well. So they have some very strong requirements. And it might be some of the most stringent algorithms at the moment for this type of HPCs. So we've used Meluxina amongst others. And of course, then you have to make the models easily accessible for businesses, because I mean, we are a startup, we want to make money, and especially what's nice with this model is that they are very hard to make, but then they are very easy to use. Like you just type in plain English or plain French what you want, and then it does what you want. So you don't need to have any specific knowledge in AI or NLP, and it's going to impact many businesses. So at Lighton, what we do is we train this language model natively in some European languages. Like the competition, it all started with a startup called OpenAI in California, and they did that in English, of course. They are an American company. But we believe that Europe has a diversity of languages that's, as seen from the US, it's a nightmare. No one is going to come into Europe because of this language model, because this diversity makes it too difficult, too complex. But for us, we believe it's a strength. It's a strength of Europe to have all this diversity of languages if we invest in this diversity. So we train that natively in European languages, we customize the model, and we sell the access to this model as a software as a service. Just a simple API, you just access the model and so on. So our markets are digital marketing, EdTech, educational technology, and then contextual chatbots and so on, and search as well. So we have these models trained in French, Spanish, Italian. At the moment, in these 3 languages, they are the most powerful language models on the market. We also have English and German as well, where there is as well competition. And soon we'll have Arabic. We have a collaboration with a research center in Abu Dhabi developing in language model in modern standard Arabic and Portuguese as well. And we'll cover next year most major European languages. So it's important to train a model per language, because translation has limits. Just to give an example, if you translate from a US about car consumption, they would give you something about 30 miles per gallon, 30 miles per gallon, and I don't have a clue what it means. I mean, I'm a European. I don't know what if it's a high or a low consumption. Translation does not capture language in its whole entirety. And I believe very strongly as well that it's, we were talking about EU sovereignty in the hardware, HPC and so on. In this AI, there's a very strong element of EU sovereignty as well. It's a US dominated field. The Asian, the Chinese and Korean are investing massively as well. I strongly believe that Europe should invest in this AI technology. We are a handful of companies doing that, very, very few. But I think it's important that we are not lagging behind. And if you want to just play with it, we have this free sandbox, as we call it, muse.lighton.ai, and you can play with the language model in these 5 languages. It's very funny, but you can also use it in your business, and that's it.
Well, it's interesting to see a startup in this using a supercomputer, and actually we have also some others where you're based in Paris, but we have some other startups here in Luxembourg that are exploring, trying to use a supercomputer thanks to Fit for Start program that Luxinnovation is leading, and there are some startups here working with LuxProvide to use the supercomputer. So it's nice to see that not just big companies are using supercomputer, but also startups. Now I'd like to get back to you to understand how you worked with LuxProvide, because I understand that Husky is working with LuxProvide, and if you had already experience in HPC before working with them, and what kind of skills your company needs to have in order to collaborate with them or to use it?
Yeah, so for us, HPC was, a big discovery. Obviously, we get the support from Luxinnovation, and we worked with the Ministry of Economy at the very beginning. So I remember we went in Brussels to get the HPC with the ministry. So it was a great experience. But from a need point of view, it's something that we've seen from the start that there's a true need there. So it's an innovation. So we wanted to experiment this, and one of the key reason why we felt that it was important to have something locally in Luxembourg is because we need to scale up our resources. So HPC is pretty specific. It has a very specific requirement and skill set, and bringing our standard finite element analysis towards HPC is a journey. And obviously with the support of LuxProvide, we can speed up this process, and that's very important because our guys are using supercomputers as well, but 24 CPUs. So for us that is big, and in order to do this simulation, we need to transfer our knowledge to this supercomputer. So our journey has been started 2 years ago when we learned about that. Then obviously working with Luxinnovation to build a program of R&D, and then starting to experiment. And this experimentation actually is building up the momentum within the team, so they've been already impressed. And as we go, we see lots of use cases for industrial as us. And the idea later on is to build a development program in order to develop the skill set, the knowledge, and the use cases that we have for HPC, driving the value that we're looking for.
So you're working with LuxProvide, so they teach you how to use better HPC, right?
Yeah,
Good.
exactly. So no, but it's complex, and we do FEA and CFD analysis, for 20 years. But when you go in front of the machine and you need to look at the technology and how to fit this for the purpose. First of all, we had also the experience of certain softwares, and the software are not always portable. So we need also to look what type of softwares will be used in HPC that can be slightly different. So we're using out-of-the-box solution in our company, and we are looking at all the type of software as well for HPC. So that's also a big move for us.
Great, thank you. And thank you for LuxProvide for helping out. Now I would go to Joël to ask the same question. What is your experience working with LuxProvide on this project?
Yeah, I'm really happy that our experience was very comparable. So we were given this tremendous opportunity to be experimenting with Meluxina, and we've had really good support to understand what actually we could do with Meluxina. And then we had obviously the problem that we had our software that we would want to port onto the supercomputer, and there were a number of dependencies that needed to be solved, and software never works out of the box and the first time. I think we all know that. And so we obviously had some issues, and the support of the Meluxina team was really great and instrumental to actually get it to work and allow us to then start and explore and make the necessary changes in the software also in order to really explore the capabilities of Meluxina and do this trial that we did. So this was absolutely a great experience, and I think it's also one of the important added values that LuxProvide will bring together with Meluxina, that they are capable of actually helping you to make use of this tremendous tool that this is, because we're not, at least I'm not really expert in HPC, and most people are not.
Definitely. That's very true. So there's not only LuxProvide, actually, we have also the university, and we understood that Ceratizit worked with the university, and yeah, we'd like to know why you needed that collaboration with them. Maybe you already mentioned that. But yeah, if you could elaborate a little bit why you went to them in the first place and not to someone else.
Yeah, sure. So mainly two reasons. One is the speed that HPC allows you. So going digital gives you the opportunity mainly to fail fast and then never fail in the same way a second time because you have specific log of what went wrong, right? And to fail fast, you need the computing power and the ability of doing that. On the second level that is specific to the university is that it was really a competitive advantage for being able to get access to good models and good algorithms to run on a very similar architecture where the scientists run their ideas, all right? So that's the way in which HPC, I believe, provided a very good and important link between the university, the research that is done that has academic interest, and what actually becomes industrial interest in specific fields. So that was a very important competitive advantage that this particular HPC would have against other possible options. Yeah.
Hot question: why not cloud computing instead of supercomputer?
So that's a good question. We do cloud computing as well. As it was pointed out in the previous discussion, there are many very big providers of cloud computing, AWS, Azure, and similar. I believe that clearly they fixed a lot of problem that is very good to already have fixed. So cloud computing is very competitive still. But on the other side, all cloud computing comes with their own ecosystem. And if you allow the word trick, an ecosystem kind of tends to become also an echo chamber that is not really positive for innovation, meaning you get a lot out of the box, but at the same time is really good to have access to relatively affordable raw power so that you can try any idea independently of what is optimized for the specific infrastructure or not. Right.
Mm-hmm. Someone else would like to say why they are not using cloud computing instead of supercomputer?
Yeah, yes, in our case, it's just that cloud computing doesn't offer the capabilities that we need. It's just simple as that. Like we use quite a lot Google GCP, and Google GCP you can spin a machine with like 16 GPUs, and we need one order of magnitude higher. We need between 100 and 200 GPUs at the same time with a very good interconnect between the nodes. So it's not an option for us. Just as simple as that.
Yeah, I think, we are using cloud computing on a commercial basis now that we started to we will launch these satellites and we will be using one of these providers. But in order to solve the really difficult problems and the ones that we're still exploring to solve in a fast manner, here we really made the experience that optimizing the algorithms in a really tailored manner and making use of the special capabilities of the supercomputer will still outperform what you get in a standard manner on cloud computing. Then at some point, probably they will catch up or so, and it will always, this competition will prevail. But definitely, if LuxProvide can provide, especially, for example, the GPU capabilities and some of the special features that are not so standard on the problems, and if they are really making use of that in a tailored manner for the different companies, then they will be really competitive to cloud computing.
Definitely. Jean-Christophe, you wanted to say?
Yeah. So same topic here. For cloud computing, first of all, it doesn't have all the capabilities that we need. From R&D space and from the complexity of the model that we're running. So that's the number one. And I think it's a lot of confusion around cloud computing versus supercomputer, and I think it's very important that people understand the difference. And LuxProvide can provide quite a bit of insights around that. And obviously, when we're looking at cloud computing, we are looking usually, and the way that I'm looking at that is going to be for 24/7 analytics, pretty light scalability in order to provide the 24/7 services.